The human never thought much about his neighbor when he first moved into the quiet street. The houses were small, the gardens were empty, and the nights were silent. For him, it was the perfect place to live without problems. But one house always stood out. It was the one beside his own. Its walls had a faint glow at night, like a heartbeat pulsing under the surface. The curtains were always drawn, and yet shadows moved across them, strange shapes that didn't look fully human. He knew an alien lived there. Everyone on the block knew it. The government had allowed a few of them to stay in human towns after the long war ended. Most people kept their distance. They didn't trust the aliens, they didn't talk to them. But this one had chosen to live right beside him. At first it didn't matter. The alien neighbor was quiet, never caused trouble. She came and went at strange hours, sometimes carrying boxes that seemed far too heavy for her thin arms. Sometimes the human thought he saw her eyes in the dark, glowing faintly. But he convinced himself it was only his imagination. Then the changes began. It started small. A sound, low, humming, almost like music, began to drift from her house at night. It wasn't loud, but it carried through the walls. He found himself waking in the middle of the night to that rhythm, a pulse that made his chest tighten. The second change came a week later. He noticed her walking in the garden. Her steps were unsteady, and her skin shimmered under the moonlight. Not pale, not glowing, something in between. Like heat rising from the ground. When she turned, he caught her eyes. And for the first time, he felt something strange. His stomach tightened. His heart skipped. She didn't look away. He told himself it was nothing, just a neighbor, just a coincidence. But deep down, he knew something was wrong. By the third night, things got worse. The air itself seemed different near her house, heavy, charged. It was harder to breathe when he walked past her gate. Sometimes the streetlights flickered when she opened her door. He didn't understand it, but he felt it, an energy, invisible yet pressing against him. One evening, when the sky turned red with sunset, he saw her standing outside. Her long hair whipped in the wind, though the air was still. Her hands clutched the fence and her lips moved quickly, whispering words in a language that twisted like smoke. The ground under her feet trembled as if it heard her voice. The human froze. He wanted to step forward, to ask if she was okay, but something in his chest screamed at him not to. His instincts warned him danger, and yet curiosity pulled at him harder than fear. Later that night, he couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard that humming again. It was louder now, echoing through his skull. He opened the window. The air outside shimmered like a heat wave. He saw her silhouette through the curtains, moving in strange motions, her arms raised, her body shaking as if fighting something inside. The human gripped the windowsill, his throat dry. This wasn't normal, this wasn't safe. He tried to remind himself of what little he knew about her species. Rumors spread in whispers, tales of seasons, times when their blood burned and their bodies changed. Old neighbors had said that living near one during this time was dangerous. But no one had told him what it truly meant. No one had explained the risk. That was when the first scream broke the night. It wasn't human, it wasn't even fully alien. It was something between a roar and a cry. It shook him to the bone. He stumbled back from the window, his heart racing. The lights in his own house flickered. Glass on the table rattled. He stared at her house. Silence returned, but only for a moment. Then the humming began again, stronger, faster, like 1,000 voices pressed together. The human whispered to himself, "What is happening to her?" He didn't know, but he felt it deep inside. This was only the beginning. Whatever was happening in that house, it was growing and it was coming closer. That night he shut his door, locked his windows, and sat with the lights on. He tried to stay calm, but he couldn't escape the truth. His neighbor wasn't just strange, she was changing. And something inside her was waking up. And for the first time since moving to that quiet street, the human felt real fear. The next morning, the human woke to a silence that felt heavier than usual. The strange sounds from last night were gone, but the air still carried a tension he could feel in his chest. He tried to convince himself it was only his imagination, yet a small knot of unease had formed in his stomach. He looked across the narrow street at the alien's house. Nothing seemed different. The lights were off, the curtains drawn, but something about the roofline made him glance twice. He could swear it shimmered for a second, like a heat wave above her home. By noon, the signs became impossible to ignore. The human noticed subtle changes in the environment. Trees near her yard bent slightly toward the house, their leaves trembling though there was no wind. Birds avoided that side of the street, their shadows flitting nervously past the fences. Even the neighborhood cats stayed hidden. Hissing at empty spaces, he tried to act normal, walking past her gate as if nothing had happened. But the moment he stepped near, a faint warmth brushed his skin, like a pulse, slow, powerful. Aware of him, he stopped, heart hammering, his feet frozen on the pavement. Then he saw her. The alien neighbor stepped into her small garden. Her eyes were bright, almost too bright, glimmering like sunlight on water. Her body seemed to float slightly, as if she barely touched the ground. Her movements were smooth yet unnatural, bending in ways that made the human stomach twist. She raised her hands, and the air around them vibrated faintly, leaving trails of light that disappeared like smoke. He wanted to look away, but he couldn't. Something in her gaze anchored him, held him in place. He could feel her attention slicing through the space between them, examining him, learning him, and he shivered. It was then that he noticed the signs everyone had warned about. Though he hadn't understood them before, the pieces now fell together. Her skin wasn't just shimmering. Patches of it glowed faintly, pulsing in rhythm with her breath like tiny stars moving beneath her surface. And her scent, he realized, had changed. Sweet, strange, almost intoxicating, filling the small street. Curling around his senses and refusing to let go, he staggered back, gripping the fence for support. This wasn't just the presence of an alien neighbor anymore. This was something alive, powerful, and dangerous. Over the next few days, more signs appeared. The humming from the first night grew stronger, louder and harder to ignore. It came at odd hours. Sometimes when the sun was high, sometimes in the dead of night, and every time it happened, small objects around her house vibrated slightly. Picture frames on walls rattled, garden tools shifted. Even the fence posts leaned inward as if pulled by some invisible hand. The human tried talking to other neighbors, people who had lived beside aliens before, hoping for advice, but no one wanted to answer. Everyone looked nervous, some even refused to meet his eyes. Whispers floated past his door. "Stay away. It's the season. Don't get too close." But no one explained what that meant, leaving him alone with growing fear and curiosity. He began to watch her more closely, trying to understand, trying to predict, anything to prepare, but nothing made sense. She moved with purpose, yet without intent. Her actions seemed to follow some ancient rhythm, steps that belonged to a time before humans existed. Her voice, when she spoke, was soft, melodic, yet carried weight, strange syllables that resonated in his chest, sending shivers down his spine. One night, he saw her step outside without a sound. The glow from her skin brightened like a lantern in the dark. She walked slowly to the edge of her garden, hands stretched toward the sky, and a low hum escaped her lips, vibrating through the air. The streetlights flickered violently, then steadied, almost in rhythm with her breathing. And then he noticed the first real danger. Small cracks appeared in the pavement around her feet. The earth itself seemed to bend toward her, raising tiny ridges, splitting the asphalt. As he stepped closer, he felt a tingle in his fingertips. A warning, he recoiled, heart hammering, realizing that whatever was awakening inside her wasn't just a personal change. It affected the world around her. The next morning, flowers that had been planted days ago near her yard had wilted overnight. Droplets of water on leaves dried instantly, and even the shadows felt wrong, stretching longer than they should, bending in directions that made no sense. The human had to make a choice, stand back and watch, or get closer and try to understand. Fear warred with curiosity, pulling him in opposite directions. Every instinct told him to flee, yet a strange connection, impossible to explain, tied him to the alien. A thread he could not cut. By the fifth day, it became undeniable. The alien's mating season had begun, though he still didn't understand it fully. Her body moved differently, her energy radiated outward, and every glance she cast seemed to measure him, test him, pull him into a world he wasn't ready for. The humming, the lights, the strange vibrations in the air, they were all signs, a warning he couldn't ignore. And in that moment, standing on the street with his heart racing, the human realized something terrifying and exhilarating. He was living beside a force of nature, something ancient and powerful, something that could change him, his home, perhaps even the world, and he wasn't prepared. The human had tried to prepare himself, watching from his window, keeping a safe distance, pretending he could remain an ordinary neighbor. But the alien's presence made that impossible. Every movement she made seemed to ripple through the world around her, touching everything in ways he didn't understand. It started quietly, as mornings often did, with a soft humming that rose like mist through the streets. The human stepped outside, cautious, trying to act normal as he approached the alien's yard. But before he could reach the fence, the ground beneath his feet trembled, sending small stones skittering across the pavement. He froze, heart hammering, remembering the cracks that appeared days ago. The humming grew louder, vibrating in his chest, making him feel both terrified and alive. Then, without warning, the alien appeared in front of him, moving faster than he thought possible. Her eyes glowed brighter than ever, and her voice, soft but commanding, carried through the air, sending shivers down his spine. "I warned you," she said, though her lips barely moved. The vibration carried the words straight into his mind, bypassing sound entirely. He stumbled backward, trying to speak, but no words came. Only a rush of heat, strange energy that wrapped around him like invisible chains. Suddenly, a garden near her house exploded outward, petals and soil flying in every direction. Tiny shards of stone leapt from the ground, propelled by some invisible force. The human barely ducked in time, feeling a sting as a fragment grazed his arm. His breathing quickened, every instinct screaming at him to run, but his feet refused to move. Then it happened. The first real contact. Her hand extended toward him, not aggressively, but deliberately. As her fingers brushed the air above his shoulder, a strange current shot through his body, sharp and electric. His muscles tensed, then relaxed, as if some unseen force was rewriting his own control over them. He fell to his knees, trembling, eyes wide in disbelief. "You feel it too," she whispered. Or perhaps it was only a thought, resonating inside his head. His mind reeled, trying to understand, but the sensation was overwhelming, like standing under a waterfall while being lifted by the current, simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating. The humming peaked, now a low roar vibrating through the street. Even the air seemed charged, buzzing with energy. Windows rattled in their frames, leaves spun in tiny cyclones, and a street lamp bent toward the alien, bowing under some invisible weight. The human's gaze followed it, feeling a mix of awe and fear. And then the neighbors noticed. Voices rose from behind fences, calling out, shouting warnings. Some ran, others froze, unsure what to do. But the alien seemed unaware of them, or perhaps indifferent. Her focus was entirely on him, measuring, testing, drawing him deeper into her strange orbit. The human tried to stand, legs weak, but he managed to lift himself, staggering backward, only to see the first clear sign of what the season truly meant. The air shimmered, bending light in strange patterns, and from the shadows small creatures emerged, drawn to her. Animals he had never seen before, twisting, alien, yet curiously beautiful, their eyes glinting with the same luminescence that flowed through her veins. One of the creatures darted toward him, its movement swift, too fast to dodge completely, brushing against his arm, and for a second, he felt its thoughts, raw and sharp, a mix of curiosity and caution. It was as if the alien's energy extended beyond her body, touching every living thing in her vicinity, controlling, communicating, commanding. Panic rose in his chest, and finally, he tried to flee. But the world around him resisted. Small objects shifted, subtle currents pushing him back. Her energy wasn't aggressive, but it demanded attention, demanded that he remain, demanded that he acknowledge its presence. He stumbled, almost falling, then caught himself, realizing he could not escape easily. In that moment, he understood the truth. The mating season was not just about the alien. It was about everything around her, every living being, every piece of matter, every sound, every vibration, all tied together by a force older than he could comprehend. And humans were not meant to confront it unprepared, not alone, but something inside him refused to retreat. Something curious, something stubborn, pulling him toward the danger instead of away from it. He glanced at the alien again, seeing her smile faintly, almost approvingly, and a shiver ran down his spine. The energy around her softened slightly, like a tide retreating, giving him a moment to breathe. "Are you ready?" she asked. Or perhaps it wasn't a question, but a statement. carrying weight that pressed against his chest, forcing him to consider the impossible. He nodded, unsure if it was agreement, or acceptance or defiance. But in that instant, he felt the first real bond form, a connection that neither fully understood, yet existed nonetheless. The first incident had occurred, and there was no turning back. From that day on, he knew that life beside her would never be normal. The mating season had begun, and with it came changes, challenges, dangers, and discoveries. Every sound, every movement, every breath carried new meaning, and he was trapped in the middle of it, fascinated and terrified in equal measure. And he realized that he would need all his courage, wit, and perhaps luck, to survive what was coming. The first incident had only been the beginning, and the fallout would soon reach beyond anything he had ever imagined. The human barely had time to catch his breath after the first incident. The air still shimmered faintly around the alien, and even from a distance he could feel the residual energy tingling across his skin. He wanted to retreat, to take a moment and pretend everything had returned to normal, but deep down, he knew normal was gone forever. He stepped carefully toward his door, only to notice movement at the edge of the street, shadows stretching unnaturally, bending with the wind, though the air was still. A figure approached, tall and thin, its shape alien even compared to his neighbor. He froze, unsure if it was friend or foe, curiosity warring with fear. The figure paused, tilting its head as if studying him. Its eyes glowed faintly, a soft amber light that made him shiver. "I didn't expect to find a human here," it said, the voice echoing strangely, not through sound but directly into his mind, sharp and clear. He stumbled backward, heart racing, struggling to form words. Who are you?" he managed, his voice barely above a whisper. "I am an observer," the visitor replied, "sent to monitor the events." Its words were calm, yet there was an underlying intensity, a weight he couldn't ignore. He realized the visitor knew about the mating season, about the alien next door, perhaps even more than he did. The human glanced back at the alien neighbor who watched silently from her yard, her glowing eyes faintly amused, almost as if she had invited this visitor here deliberately. Why are you here?" he asked, fear and curiosity blending into one. The observer's form shimmered slightly, flickering like light through water. "The mating season is dangerous, unpredictable, especially for humans," it said, stepping closer, and the air around it vibrated slightly. "I am here to guide or protect, as needed." A chill ran down his spine. He had never expected someone or something to intervene, and yet the visitor did not seem threatening, only strange, unfamiliar, and unnervingly calm. The alien neighbor shifted her stance, her eyes narrowing slightly, watching the visitor, her glow pulsing faster, as if the visitor's presence was an intrusion she had not anticipated. But she did not move aggressively, merely observing, testing, waiting. The human noticed tiny particles floating in the air, responding to the visitor's presence, glowing faintly and forming patterns almost like a warning. Almost immediately, the alien neighbor reacted, her hands moving subtly, sending currents that disturbed the floating particles, creating an invisible barrier. The human realized he was witnessing a standoff, invisible and silent and yet charged with energy that could hurt or protect him at any moment. He wanted to run, to escape, but his legs were frozen, captivated by the tension, and terrified of making the wrong move. Then the visitor spoke again, softer this time. "Do not worry. You are a witness, not the target." The words carried a strange comfort, yet his stomach knotted. He still did not fully understand what he was witnessing, or what might happen next. Suddenly, the alien neighbor moved closer to the visitor, her glow brightening, casting long shadows across the street. "You shouldn't be here," she said. Or rather, her words resonated directly into his mind, sharp and commanding. "This is my space, my time. Stay away." The visitor raised a hand, an almost imperceptible gesture, and the energy around them calmed slightly, a truce forming, fragile and tense. "I do not wish to fight, only to observe," it said, voice calm, deliberate, measured. "The human is new, unaware. I will ensure he remains safe." The human blinked, unable to believe what he was hearing. "Safe?" he whispered, unsure if he should be relieved or terrified. The observer turned toward him, its eyes meeting his directly. "If you wish to survive this season, you will need to trust, or at least understand, what is happening around you." A gust of wind suddenly blew through the street, carrying with it a strange, musky scent that made his skin tingle. He realized that even the environment responded to the alien neighbor. Reacting to her presence and the visitor's intervention, he felt exposed, vulnerable, yet strangely alive. The alien neighbor tilted her head, watching him carefully, her eyes softening slightly, almost curious, almost playful. She reached out, a small gesture of acknowledgement, and he felt the energy brush him warm and electric, reminding him why he could not leave, why he could not turn away. "You will see more," the visitor whispered, stepping back, fading slightly into the shadows. "Prepare yourself. This is only the beginning." Its presence dissolved, leaving a quiet tension behind. The human's heart raced as he realized he had glimpsed something far bigger than himself, something that would change his life forever. The alien neighbor smiled faintly, almost knowingly, and returned to her yard, the glow in her eyes dimming slightly. Though he could still feel her energy pulsing, the human exhaled shakily, aware that nothing would ever be normal again, that the mating season, the alien's power, and now the observer's involvement had shifted the rules entirely. And he understood one truth clearly. The fallout of this season would not only affect the alien neighbor and him, it would ripple outward, touching lives, bending reality, and perhaps altering the course of events far beyond this quiet street. For the first time he felt the weight of the world pressing down, the weight of unseen forces, and the understanding that he could neither hide nor run, only endure, learn, and survive what was coming. And deep inside, despite the fear, he felt a spark of curiosity, a thrill that maybe, just maybe, he could rise to meet what lay ahead. The human woke up the next morning with a heaviness he could not shake. The street outside was quiet, the sky a soft gray, yet he could feel something lingering in the air, a tension that made his skin crawl. He rubbed his eyes and tried to convince himself it was just yesterday's fear lingering, but instinct told him otherwise. He looked across the street at his alien neighbor's home, and the faint glow of her markings flickered even in the daylight, unusual, almost like she was waiting. He shivered, realizing he had crossed into a world that did not follow human rules. He grabbed his jacket and stepped outside cautiously, trying to seem normal, but every step felt heavy, as if the ground itself was charged with electricity. The air seemed thicker here, warmer and faintly musky, the scent of alien pheromones lingering, reminding him that the mating season was far from over. Suddenly, a shadow moved quickly across the street, too fast for a human, too unnatural for an ordinary creature. His heart jumped and he froze, trying to identify the shape. The alien neighbor appeared at her door, her glow steady, watching him carefully, her gaze both protective and warning. A sudden noise broke the silence, a sharp, metallic clank from the alley nearby. He turned toward it and his stomach sank. The visitor from the previous night was nowhere to be seen, and yet he could sense an energy shifting, something hidden, watching, waiting. Before he could react, a figure emerged from the shadows, taller than any human, its limbs long and angular, and its skin shimmered faintly like wet metal. Its eyes glowed a deep red, and a low hum vibrated through the air, almost like it was alive. He could feel the vibrations in his chest, making it hard to breathe. He realized with a cold shiver that this was not just any alien, this was a predator. And it had found him first. It moved slowly, deliberately testing him, aware that he was inexperienced, vulnerable, and possibly dangerous to its plans. The alien neighbor stepped forward suddenly, her glow intensifying, casting sharp shadows across the street. The predator stopped, seemingly analyzing her, and then shifted its gaze back to him. The human felt the weight of attention, the invisible scales of threat tipping dangerously. "Run," she whispered, not to him, but into his mind, her voice clear, urgent, commanding. He felt the command like a physical push, urging him to move, and he obeyed, darting toward the safety of his home, the predator following just behind. Silent, fast, and relentless, he slammed the door shut, locking it with trembling hands. and pressed himself against it, trying to calm his racing heart. He could hear faint movements outside, metallic scraping, and a low growl that vibrated through the walls, reminding him that the danger was not over. It was only beginning. Through the window. He caught glimpses of the predator circling, its red eyes scanning, its body almost blending with the shadows, waiting for a mistake, waiting for him to let fear weaken his resolve. He realized he had never been this aware of life, or death, or the fragile line between them. The alien neighbor appeared suddenly at his window, her eyes glowing brightly, almost fierce, almost angry. "It is not safe here," she said calmly, though he could feel the intensity behind her words. "You do not understand the danger that comes with this season." He swallowed hard, nodding though he did not fully comprehend. I don't know what to do," he admitted, his voice trembling. "You will learn," she replied, her gaze piercing. "The predator senses weakness. You must become aware or it will claim you." The human nodded again, feeling a strange mixture of fear and exhilaration. He had never imagined his life could be so dangerous, so alive, and yet he could not turn away, could not ignore the strange thrill that surged through him, reminding him that survival required attention, intelligence, and courage. The predator's movements became more aggressive, scratching at the door, testing the boundaries, and he realized with horror that this creature was learning, adapting, and that every second counted. He glanced at the alien neighbor, hoping she would intervene, but she merely observed, her presence a shield and a warning, teaching him in silence that not all protection comes from fighting. Sometimes it comes from awareness, strategy, and timing. He realized he would have to trust her guidance, watch her carefully, and learn the rhythms of this alien world, or he would become a target, a casualty of forces far beyond his understanding. The predator's eyes glinted, and he knew one mistake could cost him everything. His heart raced, his mind sharpened, and in that moment, he understood the truth of the mating season, the alien neighbor, and the unseen dangers lurking in shadows. This was a world where instinct and courage mattered more than strength, and deep inside, despite the terror, he felt a spark of determination, a strange courage building, telling him that he would not just survive, he would endure, learn, and maybe somehow thrive, even in a world that had been completely alien, because the hidden danger was only the beginning, and he had no choice but to face it. The human could barely sleep that night. The shadows in his room seemed longer, darker, and heavier than before. Every small sound from the street made him jump. Every flicker of light from the alien neighbor's home made his heart race. He knew something was coming, something he could not see yet. He stared at the ceiling, thinking about the predator outside, the one with glowing red eyes and sharp metallic limbs. He remembered the warning from his alien neighbor: awareness, timing, survival. She had not said it directly, but her presence at his window had been more than a shield. It was a signal. A test morning arrived with a dull, uneasy quiet. The air was warmer now, filled with a strange, sweet scent that made his head swim. He realized it was not coming from flowers or food. It was the alien neighbor herself, her pheromones drifting through the air, an invisible tide that both intrigued and warned him. He stepped outside cautiously, the street empty except for the faint outlines of alien markings on walls, doors, and even the ground. They glowed faintly, almost like signals or warnings leading somewhere. He followed them instinctively, as if pulled by a force he could not explain. The markings led him to the edge of the alley, and there he saw something that froze him in place. A small, strange alien creature crouched in the shadows, its body delicate and translucent, its eyes large and glimmering like tiny stars. It looked both frightened and intelligent, as if it was waiting for him. The alien neighbor appeared silently behind him, her glow calm but steady. "Do not approach too quickly," she warned, her voice low. But the human could hear it in his mind clearly. He nodded, keeping his movement slow, but curiosity and fear battled in his chest. The creature tilted its head, observing him with a cautious interest. He noticed its skin shimmered with faint patterns, almost like the predator's, but softer, less threatening. It moved slightly, testing him, and he realized it might be connected to the predator, somehow, but in a way he could not yet understand. Suddenly, a sound behind him made him spin. The predator appeared at the far end of the alley, its red eyes glowing brighter. It moved silently, its presence dominating the space. But strangely, it did not attack immediately. It paused, almost observing, and his stomach churned with fear. The alien neighbor stepped forward, placing herself between the predator and him. Her markings flared brightly, illuminating the alley with a golden glow, and for a moment the predator hesitated, almost as if it recognized her, almost as if it respected her strength or feared it. He realized then that she had power beyond what he could imagine, that she controlled something in this world he did not understand. But before he could process it, the small alien creature in the shadows moved closer to him, and he felt a strange warmth, a pulse of life that was both comforting and strange. It reached out with a delicate limb touching his hand lightly, and he felt an energy surge through him. He could hear thoughts, emotions, and instincts that were not his own. A connection formed, silent but intense, and he realized that this creature was trying to communicate, trying to teach him. The predator moved closer, its eyes narrowing. Sensing the bond forming, the alien neighbor flared her glow again, stepping closer to him, and he felt a strange courage building inside. He understood that the predator was dangerous, but the creature and the neighbor were allies in this world if he could learn to listen. The small creature shifted, pointing toward a narrow passage at the side of the alley. Almost guiding him, he hesitated, but the neighbor nodded, silently urging him to follow. The predator growled low, warning him not to move, but he felt the warmth and safety from the creature and the neighbor, giving him the strength to act. He stepped forward cautiously. Every nerve alert, every muscle tense, he followed the small alien into the passage, feeling the walls close around him, the air thicker now, and the shadows alive with movement. But he pressed on because instinct, survival, and curiosity all pushed him forward. The passage opened into a small hidden chamber, filled with glowing crystals that hummed softly. The air vibrated with energy, and the small alien hovered in the center, its glow brightening, signaling that he had arrived safely. He felt his heartbeat slow slightly, realizing he had made it through a dangerous test. The alien neighbor appeared behind him again, her eyes softening. "You are learning," she said quietly, almost a whisper. "The world is not kind, but understanding it gives you power." He looked at the small alien creature, understanding that this encounter was only the beginning, that it had chosen him for some reason, and that the predator outside was still waiting, still testing him, still observing every mistake he might make. And in that chamber, surrounded by soft light and strange energy, he realized that his life had changed forever, that the mating season, the alien neighbor, the predator, and the small creature were all part of a world he had only begun to understand, a world where danger, connection, and survival intertwined, and he had no choice but to embrace it. The human could feel it immediately, a cold, sharp presence crawling along his spine. He knew the predator had followed them into the hidden chamber, though he could not see it. The small alien creature shivered slightly, its glow dimming as if warning him silently. The alien neighbor's eyes narrowed, her glow steady but tense, signaling danger. He gripped the small creature's delicate hand, feeling its warmth, its pulse of life. It gave him courage, but he could not ignore the predator, not when it was near, its red eyes glinting through the shadows outside the chamber. He tried to control his breathing, each inhale deliberate, each exhale steady. Suddenly, the predator lunged from the shadows, its limbs stretching unnaturally, moving faster than his eyes could follow. The chamber trembled with the force of its arrival, and the human barely jumped out of the way in time, crashing against a crystal wall, shards pricking his skin but not cutting deeply. The small alien squeaked, frightened, its body curling instinctively, but the human reached out and whispered, "It's okay. I'm here," trying to calm both himself and the creature. Though his voice trembled, it had a strange effect, slowing the predator, almost like it recognized his courage or defiance. The alien neighbor stepped forward, her body glowing fiercely now, the markings along her arms swirling like molten gold. She raised her hands and the air around her vibrated. The predator paused, sensing her energy, its growl low and dangerous but uncertain. The human realized then that the chamber itself seemed alive with energy, the crystals amplifying the neighbor's power, and the predator's aggression met a barrier it could not immediately penetrate. He took a deep breath, his fear mixing with awe, understanding that this fight was not just physical, but also a battle of presence and intent. The predator struck again, claws slashing through the air. But the neighbor's glow expanded, forming a protective dome around them, deflecting the attack. The crystals around them hummed louder, sending vibrations through the floor and walls, as if the entire chamber was alive, sensing danger, sensing the predator. The small alien creature lifted its head, its eyes meeting his, and he felt a strange understanding, a connection stronger than before. It moved toward a crystal at the center of the room. Tapping it gently, and the chamber lit up with bright, pulsing energy, almost like a heartbeat. The predator hesitated, sensing a shift. Its instincts conflicted between aggression and caution. The human realized this was their chance. He moved forward, shielding the small alien, positioning himself between it and the predator. And for a moment he felt truly alive, truly important. The predator roared, a deep, vibrating sound that shook the crystals. But the neighbor responded instantly, her glow flaring, forming tendrils of light that reached toward the predator, pushing it back, holding it at bay. The human marveled at her strength, but also knew he had to act. He remembered the creature's earlier gesture, guiding him, and now he understood. He tapped the crystal as the creature had done, feeling the energy surge through him, flowing into the small alien, into the neighbor, forming a network of power, something beyond his understanding but undeniable. The predator lunged one final time, and this time, the chamber itself seemed to resist it. The crystals shining brighter, the neighbor's glow forming a shield that pushed it back. The predator skidded to a stop, growling, its movements slower now, frustrated and confused, sensing it had met forces it could not control. The human felt a strange confidence, a courage he had never known. He stepped closer to the predator, holding his ground. Standing tall despite fear, despite danger, he could feel the alien neighbor behind him, lending him strength silently. The small creature at his side, giving him a reason to fight. The predator stared at him, eyes narrowing as if measuring his will, his intent. It seemed to hesitate, uncertain if this human was prey or something more, something dangerous, something connected to powers it did not understand. The human held its gaze, unblinking, refusing to retreat. Then slowly, the predator backed away, its claws scraping the ground, its red eyes glowing less fiercely, almost reluctantly. It circled to the edge of the chamber, watching, waiting, but no longer attacking, as if it understood that this encounter was not over. But it had been challenged and lost a battle of dominance. The alien neighbor exhaled softly, the glow around her dimming slightly, her eyes still fixed on the predator, but her posture relaxing. The small creature hopped onto the human's shoulder, its body glowing faintly, a sign of trust and gratitude, and he felt an overwhelming sense of relief. He realized that survival was no longer just about hiding or running. It was about understanding the creatures, their instincts, and the power they all shared. The predator had not been defeated by strength alone, but by courage, connection, and understanding, a lesson he would never forget. For the first time since the mating season had begun, he felt a spark of hope. He had survived the predator's strike, protected the small alien, and earned the respect of the neighbor. But he knew this was only the beginning. The mating season, the predator, and the hidden world around them had many more challenges waiting. And as he stood in the glowing chamber, chest heaving, eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of movement, he understood one thing clearly. He could not escape this world, but he could face it, he could fight. Protect and perhaps even thrive. The predator had struck, but he had survived, and in surviving, he had changed, grown, and prepared for whatever came next.